We have a car slowed and heading into the pits.
Chuck Bauer, the Courier Plastics number 99B out of Lansing, New York. His day looks like it's coming to an end.
Kenny Tremont has the largest lead we've seen here all week. He's got almost a 5.5 second lead on Jimmy Horton. Look at the interval. What's that all about?
Wow, that is just pure power at its finest. And of course, he's up front running in clean air, no traffic to deal with right now. And you know, we talk about how guys feel comfortable in certain race cars. Billy Decker bringing with him a car that he's won 3 out of the last 4 years with. Here's Kenny Tremont, as we talked about, driving the same car he won the Eckered 200 with in 1999, and he finished second with this car last year. He feels comfortable in this machine, and feeling comfortable at a racetrack like Syracuse is very important.
I'm wondering if, and I don't recall if Tremont took on tires, and if that's the reason why he's pulled out this huge lead. A 6-second lead now over Jimmy Horton. Let's take a look at that jingle in turn 3 and 4, and look at the contact once and twice between Chrisman and Hearn. They go way wide around that lap car, and here come Tremont and Horton. Wow!
Heads-up piece of driving by Kenny Tremont and Jimmy Horton. They saw both Chrisman and Hearn skate up the top side of the speedway, and the door opened, and they walked right through.
The leader by more than 6 seconds over Jimmy Horton. You don't see that.
No.
Look at the interval. Of course, a yellow would change all that.
I think Kenny Tremont, even if he did get a yellow, would still be able to open up this much of a lead. His car seems to be handling so much better through the turns than both Horton and Brett Hearn right there in the number 3 machine. He's not drifting up as far through the corner as both of those cars are.
Kenny Tremont has almost a full straightaway lead.
That's a big lead considering how big this racetrack is.
Hearn made a quick move on Horton, and then he really hasn't challenged Jimmy Horton since, and I wonder if he's thinking, I better not race this car out of fuel.
Well, he could be thinking that. 127 laps is a long ways to go here on the mile. He might have just backed it off a little bit. Of course, Hearn probably wanted to get out in front as well to get that clean air through the motor to help him conserve.
All right, let's go back down to the pits and see what is going on with Kenny Tremont, who now leads by 7.2 seconds.
Well, Doug, you asked a real good question about tires. Here's the story. As you'll remember, back on about lap 50 or so, when Tremont made his first stop, they did change both rears. But on lap 90, when he made his second stop, they didn't change any tires. So right now, Kenny Tremont's tires are kind of fresh. But as we get in the late stages of the race, he'll have 40 laps more on his rear tires than the competition. That could loom large.
Thank you.
You know, the Valley Drivers, the Lebanon Valley Speedway Drivers, a very fast place to race on Saturday nights. Kenny Tremont enjoys the success here at the mile in the 358 modified division and also in the big block division. A lot of that has to do with the speeds of the Lebanon Valley Speedway. It's high banked and they really motor around that track. So Kenny Tremont, no stranger to fast speeds, especially when he comes here to the mile.
And remember, while Kenny Tremont won this Eckered 200 in 1999, he finished second last year, so he's used to running up front.
Bud Chrisman still, look at those rotors glow. We noticed that earlier today. He's really getting on the brakes to set the car up through the corners.
Isn't that something?
Well, they're carrying a lot of speed down the back straightaways. If they're averaging 115, 116 miles on a one lap, they're hitting over 130, 135 miles an hour in the straightaways.
Last lap, Horton was a half a second, half a tick faster than Kenny Tremont.
But that half a tick only brought it down to a little less than 7 seconds.
Still a long way to go.
You can see one car looming in the background behind Bud Chrisman, someone we haven't really talked about too much today. Danny Johnson in the number 14 New York car out of the J-Bomb Racing Stables. Raced at the Middletown Speedway, the Orange County Fair Speedway this season. Changed his number, usually runs the number 27J. Running the number 14, it's a number that his dad used to run when he raced, and wanted to just run that 14 for his sake here at the mile.
Jimmy Horton now trails by 5.3 seconds, so he is definitely gaining on Kenny Tremont. In fact, he turned a lap 1 second faster than Tremont this last lap.
I wonder if Tremont has backed off just a little bit to kind of conserve, because he does have to go 101 laps on a tank of fuel. He opened up a big lead. Now he has a little bit to play with. I think you'll see if Kenny Tremont starts to feel some pressure from Jimmy Horton, he may put the spurs back to the pony.
Now Kenny Tremont is coming into some lap traffic. Back down to Andy Fusco.
Doug, let's talk about Brett Hearn for a second. You know, Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan until they get hit. I think the same thing may apply to Brett Hearn right now. He couldn't in a million years have imagined that he'd be third on the grid behind two cars that pitted later than him at this juncture of the race. And here's why that's big. These cars use a lot more fuel when you're following somebody. A Winston Cup car, following somebody conserves fuel. But in a dirt modified, when you're out front all by yourself and you can feather foot it, you can save fuel. Right now, Brett Hearn having to try to chase Jimmy Horton and then try to catch Kenny Tremont. That is his worst nightmare.
Well, and Andy, I'll tell you, Brett Hearn couldn't have dreamed that the competition that would have given him the most headaches in the Eckered 200 would be that of a lap car, Kevin Bolin. Twice.
Well, I'll say this much. Kevin Bolin gave Bob McCready fits at Eldora 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, maybe he could have imagined that one.
All right.
A lot of truth to that. Kevin Bolin, a tough and fierce competitor, didn't want to go down a lap. All these guys, a lot of pride, a lot of money riding on the line. Every position matters to these drivers. Brett Hearn setting a new track record in qualifying earlier this week. Picked up his 8th consecutive Suzuki 2020 qualifying win on Friday. 8 years in a row, he has won a 2020 qualifying race. And back in 1996, he didn't only win one, he won 2 of them.
Now let me say this to you as well, as Kenny Tremont is into lap traffic. And remember, it is so difficult to pass. The lead over Jimmy Horton is now less than 2 seconds.
Doug Hoffman in the Dieter Schmidt-owned Lincoln Auto Body number 5 out of Allentown, Pennsylvania, former winner of this race, pulling his machine behind the wall.
With 50 laps to go, it's Kenny Tremont leading. Jimmy Horton is in second place, but obviously closing. Brett Hearn is third, Bud Chrisman fourth, Danny Johnson is fifth. The lead has shrunk to 1.2 seconds.
And Jimmy Horton reeling him in. You can see Kenny Tremont, the second car on your screen. Jimmy Horton right behind him. And
he can't get past the lap traffic.
He can't, and that's been, it seems to be the story here today. Everybody's had a little trouble with their own little lap traffic battles.
Our scanners on Tremont. And as Jimmy Horton brushed the wall.
And that cost him some ground that he had on Brett Hearn, and it's also going to cost him ground on what he was gaining on Kenny Tremont.
Let's see if it cost him his steering.
Car low in turn 1.
He looks to be okay. My goodness.
Well, with 47 laps remaining, everybody's shown their hand. Now it's time to go.
Tremont again cannot get by Tobias.
And it's hurting him.
And there's 1, 2, and 3.
Horton really closing in on the back decklet with the 115 of Tremont. And Brett Hearn using this opportunity to close in on both of them.
And I looked down to Dave Farney. There was no move over flag.
Don't ever tell me a small car now.
You can tell he's a racer. He wants to go.
Kenny Tremont, meet Jimmy Horton. Jimmy Horton, meet Brett Hearn. You're 1, 2, and 3 on the track. Less than a second separates the top 3.
Did you ever see any tire smoke, Brian?
And they've got 3 more cars coming up in front of them.
Brian, you there?
In front of Tobias.
Brian, are you there? Yes. Tire smoke, do we ever have any? No tire smoke.
No tire smoke.
Well, that's an important question because Tremont came in around lap number 54 and took a right rear sneaker. He's got close to 100 laps on that tire right now. And once you start seeing the smoke, that means the tire is going away from him.
You see more than one groove on this racetrack?
On the straightaways, yes, but going into the corners, especially into turn number 1.
99.
And in turn number 3, it tightens up, so you're going to need to make your passes off of corner number 4. Most importantly, corner number 4.
Boy, Andy Fusco was so right when he said never would he imagine, Brett Hearn that is, to have people who pitted after him in front of him on the track.
Well, there's the old cliche, the fastest car doesn't always win the race.
Hey, the fastest lap has been turned in by Billy Decker. That was on lap 150 when he went 115 miles an hour. Back down to Andy.
Brad Hibbard, your guy Jimmy Horton hit the wall a couple of laps ago. Any damage to the car, does he say?
No, we're in good shape. Our tires are good to go. We got plenty of fuel in the car. We found a line out there that's 3/4 of a second faster than we were running. We got a shot to win this.
There's the word down here in the Horton crew. They just put the team together, like Mark Kenyon said, and they could make history.
He's on the back bumper of Kenny Tremont, but being on the back bumper is a heck of a lot easier than being outside or inside of it.
It sure is, and he is doing a great job, and he is running a little bit of a different line, as his crew chief told us. He's running a different line. It's gained 3/4 of a second each lap on the leader, and right now he is only 2 car lengths behind.
There is a lot of lap traffic pending here.
Very important for Kenny Tremont where he catches and where he passes traffic. He wants to make the pass on the straightaways and let his competitors behind him get caught up behind the slower cars in the corners.
After a flurry of yellow caution laps and then ultimately a race stoppage for a massive pileup on the backstretch, we have now run over 40 consecutive green flag laps.
Jeff Trombley, who was involved in an incident earlier with J.J. Yaley, slowing considerably as he is going to go pit side.
There are your race leaders behind a car a full lap in back of Tremont. Tremont's the 115, Horton is the 99, Brett Hearn is the number 3. 1, 2, and 3 on the track. Bud Crispin is 4th, Danny Johnson is 5th, then it's Tim Fuller, Alan Johnson, Billy Decker is now 8th, Jack Johnson and Matt Shepard the top 10. 38 laps to go.